Hey, welcome back, everybody. John, Josh, and Stibbs with you. Proud to be joined on the Dingman's Collision Center hotline, but technically it's in the stream on Stibbs TV. Blake Lawrence, former Husker linebacker and the co-founder of Opendorse, as we welcome him in on the program. How you doing, Blake?
I'm doing all right, guys. I am looking out at the Catskill Mountains of New York, and I know you listening, you can't see it, but you guys can see it. Look at this place.
Oh, look at that.
Look at that. Grill looks beautiful. Good too.
Hey, yeah, I'm gonna get that grill to work. So I moved to New York City a couple years ago, and the last 2 months, my fiance and I've been in a 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, and we decided that fresh air could be a good thing for us. So we hopped in a car and got a cabin up in the mountains for a couple weeks.
That's a good call. My sister is currently living in New York for the last couple of years, also in a very nice but very small 1-bedroom apartment, and they are going insane right now.
Yeah, it's tough. It certainly is.
Blake Lawrence joining us. He is the co-founder of Opendorse. We've been talking a lot about name, image, likeness. Of course, we were going to talk with Blake a couple months ago before all this stuff hit the fan. But now that we've got some progress and the NCAA is definitely moving forward with name, image, likeness, I have to imagine now the ball can really get rolling on some of the ideas that you and your company will have when it comes to dealing with college athletes who want to monetize off of their social media presence.
Yeah, this is a big time in our lives at Opendorse. For you guys, I don't know if you know much about what Opendorse does, how it works, but we are a technology company based in Lincoln, Nebraska. We've got 36 employees, and we have, for the last 8 years, provided technology to professional athletes and amateur student athletes as well that help them understand the value of their name, image, and likeness rights, grow that value, and then when they're professionals, monetize it. And in a more simple way, if you're scrolling through Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, and you see an athlete share a video or a photo that looks a little too good to be true, or maybe it's a professional athlete promoting a product or endorsing a business that you have heard of or never heard of, there's a company behind the scenes that's making all that happen, right? To get a high quality video photo to a Tiger Woods or an Alex Morgan or an Adrian Martinez, right? That same platform, that's Opendorse. Like, we're behind the scenes of the biggest athletes on the planet, sharing photos, videos, and whatnot on their social channels. But on the back end, building the infrastructure that makes sure that this is the person that sent this thing to that guy. This is how much they got paid if they're a pro, right? And here's how the whole relationship came together when they're a student athlete. So proud of it. Audie Kanalik and I have been doing this thing for 8 years now, and now 12,000 athletes around the world use our software every day.
Blake, when you talk to the universities, are they surprised at really how many layers these things can have? I mean, whenever name, image, likeness came up a few years ago, we all talked about it with the assumption of like, yeah, here's a local car dealership and maybe a local restaurant. And then you really start diving into some of the social media numbers and you start thinking about the demographics that those players are going after. And it seems to be an entirely different conversation than maybe we were having 5-10 years ago.
No, it certainly is. I think a lot of the conversation in the media today is highly centered on the traditional endorsement, and it's okay. It's because it's what we see. It's what we know. We see Tommy Frazier, pimping out a local car dealership, and like, that's what Tommy's got Tommy, Mm-hmm. And you think about the Zion Williamson, the shoe deals, like that's the conversation centered on that. But guys, that's 99.9% of student athletes won't make a dime from a local car dealership appearance, a video shoot, photo shoot, or a shoe deal, right? The majority of the student athletes are going to be compensated for use of their name, image, and likeness through the platforms they use all day, every day. Same thing for sports fans around the world. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, all of those channels that they're building up a presence. It's very quantifiable. It's free. It's widely accessible. And the ability to monetize, you just click a button. Right, versus what's required for an appearance deal or a long-term ambassador program with a shoe company is third-party representation, complex contract negotiations, and that's going to be reserved for the top 1% of 1% of student athletes. The rest of them are going to be making money again through monetizing their social and digital media presence.
Blake Lawrence of Opendorse joining us, former Husker linebacker. Blake, So the mechanics of, let's just pretend that what the NCAA has on the table does pass, and at some point in 2021, this becomes an open door. How then do you start to work with a school like Nebraska about then turning the existing social media that an Adrian Martinez has into monies that they can get, and how much does the university play a role in all of this, or are you dealing strictly with the athlete?
Yep. So what I would say is there's really three key assumptions, and I'll throw in a fourth for you.
Okay.
The first one is that the schools themselves will have no part in the solicitation, management of, and the coordination of any name, image, and likeness transaction. So the schools have to stay out of it. There's no use of school marks. There's no use of school logos, conference, whatnot. And so the schools are sitting there ready to stay on the sidelines and watch the game happen. But the student athletes get to come to the sidelines. They can coach them, right? So that's where this whole education process, the NCAA is in a situation where, okay, this is the second part, is that schools are going to be required to educate the student athletes on exactly what is name, image, and likeness. How does it work? How do you grow it? How do you manage it? When you monetize it, what you're allowed to do? How do you fill out disclosure forms? Like all those things, the schools have to task their staff with spreading to the student athletes. And then you go on the other side in the sponsors. So the third thing would be that the sponsors that are going to be transacting with student athletes are going to have to, we believe, register and receive approval to transact with student athletes in the first place. Now, this isn't to disallow anyone from that's a legitimate actor from transacting with student athletes, but it's meant to restrict bad actors. So vice industries like a marijuana company or an alcohol company for a student athlete that's 18 years old. Like, how do you police those things? Like, something has to be in place there. And then when you start to think about these complexities of allowing student athletes to ultimately monetize, educating them, ensuring that they're doing the right things and disclosing it, this is a technology-driven solution the market needs. This isn't going to be printing off forms in the computer lab and filling out, you got paid $5 to monetize your YouTube video yesterday and then doing it again tomorrow. This whole thing has to be built from the ground up to win in the technology era. And I say that you asked a very specific question. And I can't quite recall it, so you can ask it again, because I don't think I answered it. But those are the things that matter.
Yeah, it's just the mechanics of, how, because you said the university's not going to really have as much of a role, yet you do have this partnership with the university. Is that just to have the access to the athletes? Is that how that works?
So right now, Nebraska has been a partner of ours and used our software for years in helping student athletes get access to photos and videos and whatnot. And what I like in this too is a weight room where you have, you student athletes are going to be using social media, so you might as well give them photos and videos that help them use it the right way, say the right things at the right place, right time. And so it's a weight room where you put some weights in there and say, hey, go crazy, lift some weights, get stronger, whatnot. But now with name, image, and likeness, there's a game to be played. Right, that you're not just giving them photos and videos so they'd have fun. You're doing it so they build an audience that they can ultimately make more money, right? And so Opendorse, our expertise in this is over the last 8 years in the professional market, millions and millions of dollars flow through our software every year into the pockets of pro athletes. And we know why this athlete was picked over this athlete for this campaign. And we know what it looks like. What do you need to look like if you're a quarterback and you want to monetize your name, image, and likeness, and you've got 50,000 followers on Instagram? If you look like this, you could make $500 a post. But if you make these 3 or 4 changes and the sponsor sees this type of profile, you might make $750 a post. That's what the Ready program's about. It's to make sure that every student athlete at Nebraska looks the way in which they need to look the moment the rules change. That's going to maximize their earning potential on day one. And the reason we're in a unique position to give them that is that we've been providing that information to pro athletes for the last 8 years.
Blake, kind of along those lines, I read a blog post this morning from the website opendorse.com by Sam Weber titled "Why ADs Can't Wait to Prepare Their Programs for Name, Image, and Likeness Rights." And there was one thing that stood out to me the most, and it said ADs need to have a real solution for student athletes today to get them ready for the rule changes months from now. And it kind of goes on into, making sure you're credible enough to impress them. And the thing that I guess I kind of took away from it was, I think we're going to learn how very quickly which schools are on top of things and which schools aren't. And it seems like maybe this is the avenue that you are really able to help them out with, because you hear a lot of words, a lot of numbers, and this is the avenue that helps the university so they can still do what they do best.
Right. No, and this is you talk about athletic directors and athletic departments need to be prepared for this future. And I'll stick with the weight room analogy. At one point, Nebraska said, hey, having a weight room is great. Having a strength and conditioning program is going to make you the king.
Yeah.
And they led the country. And there were some schools like, I don't believe in it. And then there's other ones that jumped on and they started to win more games. Crazy how that works. You started to recruit kids that wanted to be stronger. And so this is the weight room of the next decade of college sports. This is how recruiting battles will start and be won, is on how a school is going to provide the resources to equip student athletes to make the most money possible. And so that's the part where, you think about an AD and positioning themselves to win. If you are starting now, you have a real story to tell recruits now. You have a real solution for student athletes that are ready to, be the first ones to monetize. And if you are out there as an AD and saying, let's just tell the kids that we have a plan, and then they show up and there's no plan, guess who the first person it's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to tweet about it. They're going to post on Facebook about it. They're going to do all the things that you said that, you're going to help them do. They're going to use against you. And so that's something that's going to be considered from every AD, is that you're building these student athletes to a point where you want to help them monetize, and that same audience that they've built and that presence they've built may be used against you if you're not continuing to provide real value. It's going to be exciting as hell, guys. There's going to be a lot of different entrants into the market that are going to try and help. And end of the day, student athletes are going to be in a better position after this than they are today. And I think that's something we should champion.
Talking with Blake Lawrence of Opendorse, there's going to be a lot of people wondering, and when the whole name, image, likeness conversation started, whenever the point is, you've always had the naysayers say, well, isn't this just going to create a situation where it's going to be an advantage in recruiting, where some schools are going to break the rules, and they're going to like a car dealer is going to pay a 5-star recruit $50,000 before they've ever even signed with Alabama as an enticement to come to a school like in Alabama. How careful do you have to be? Because these can be same promises. Money is money, whether you're getting it from the car dealer or from, a social media impression. Mm-hmm. How is that going to work? Or is it kind of hands off when it comes to high school athletes? We have to wait till they're actually physically on campus, or how does Opendorse deal with the high school recruit?
Yeah, so the pre-enrollment side of things is very interesting in terms of in recruiting inducement, right, and enticing kids to go to a certain school over another one. What is critical about this is to understand there's the eligibility center that every student athlete has to apply for when they go to D1, D2, D3, that they just start to disclose any earnings that they've won in their career, right? So that eligibility center already exists to try and determine what type of compensation they've received for their athletic performance. It's about adding a clause in there they must disclose also for use of their name, image, and likeness, which they also can do today if they were a model or a child actor or a musician in high school. They have to disclose that they're being compensated for that, and there's waivers around it. So how does that impact NIL recruiting today? If a student athlete is offered a recruit $50,000 to do the car dealership deal, right? That must be the fair market value for somebody in that market, that exact student athlete being compensated that. And so the example I'll give you from a Nebraska standpoint, Keyshawn Johnson Jr. came into Nebraska with a higher name, image, and likeness rights value than almost everyone on the team he stepped onto. He's a true freshman, never played it down. His line, this fan day for autographs, was longer than anyone else's. He had name, image, and likeness rights value that would justify a higher dollar amount than any other recruit in that class. That's what the NCAA has to determine, right? And there's models in which you can put and forth to say that these are the ways that you can justify why this person got paid more than this person. It's got to be tied to an actual NIL rights valuation, and the type of promotion they're participating in has to be tied back to a fair market value. All of that brings you back to the fact that you have to have a system that manages transactions for 500,000 student athletes, 12,000 sponsors, 1,200 schools, all in real time. It's an interesting problem to solve.
Yes, it is.
One in which, you know, a company down the road from you is ready to do, right? With Opendorse, we're in a fortunate position that we provided similar tools to the pro market. So, not to make it about us, but those are fun. Like for us, that's a fun thing to answer. But real questions the NCAA needs to answer in order to ensure this keeps college sports the same and doesn't turn this into a whole pay-for-play scheme.
Blake, kind of along those lines, before we let you go, what's the biggest misnomer about these conversations for you? I mean, whenever John and I have championed the idea of name, image, likeness for years now, and there's always well, what about this? What about this? What is the biggest thing that you hear that you're just like, no, that I'm not worried about that at all. I think that there's going to be a good handle on that.
I would say that the shoe deals and you know, shoe companies line up to pay play athletes like they pay pro athletes, like that's not going to be a thing. The majority of pro athletes don't get a dime from shoe companies. They get shoes from shoe companies. And guess what? I got Adidas shoes from going to Nebraska. It was a great thing. And so you got to consider that those things are big misnomers. I think that if you think about Nebraska, I like the chances of Lexi Sun and Lauren Stivrins making more money than Adrian Martinez all day. Like if I would make a bet on that, I would think that female student athletes in the influencer economy that is the social and digital media internet, like if you think about your Instagram feed tonight, scroll, tap, tap, scroll, tap, tap, you're likely to see a female influencer hawking a clothing line, you know, beauty products, you know, some things related to athletic performance, right? So female student athletes, one of the big misnomers that they're going to be left behind. I disagree entirely. I think that this would be heavily centered on social and digital media. And in that realm, Lexi Sun has more followers and a hell of a lot more engaged audience than Adrian Martinez on social media. No knock on Adrian, a compliment to Lexi. And that's the stuff that matters. Like sponsors and brands and advertisers are going to go after the quarterback as long as the quarterback produces results. Ultimately, the student athletes are going to win when they have built an audience that really cares when they support sponsors and products. And to do that, you have to be authentic. You have to go through a program of some sort. And that's kind of where bringing it back to Nebraska and the Ready Now thing is to ensure that everyone has the same access, same opportunities, and same foundation. The more work they put in, the more value they get out. And isn't that the great thing about being a student athlete in the first place? Yeah, so it's quite rewarding. And I got more. I do have more time. I know you guys want to kick me off. That's cool. I bumped back that other call, so I enjoyed it.
Perfect. Because I mean, there's a lot here in this conversation that we haven't even gotten to yet. So if you can stay for a little bit longer, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, give me a couple more. Right? Yeah, I'm good.
Well, we're talking with Blake Lawrence, the co-founder of Opendorse, who specializes in the social media impressions and getting opportunities for people on the internet. Do you see things in this NCAA legislation that might provide roadblocks? I know you've kind of talked about some of the concerns, but are there some other roadblocks that are out there? Because you've obviously been working with professional athletes, but this is now different. It's almost like, do you almost need your own compliance department to make sure that you're doing the right thing for your clients and not getting the schools in trouble?
Yeah, I would say in terms of addressing the NCAA and their guidelines that they put forth, one of the biggest restrictions, and I fought against it in terms of the conversations we were allowed to have about what this structure could look like, that student athletes can't use the school or conference or NCAA marks alongside their own. And that's a very specific restriction that is going to be limiting for a lot of the things that fans think they're going to get, which is jerseys with the names on the back. No way, can't do it, right? No bobbleheads with the logo on it, right? You stay away from trading cards with student athletes unless they're wearing generic jerseys and uniforms. And so a lot of the hard goods and digital goods, like all the licensing side, really takes a hit with the NCAA stance on that. And that's a big limiter. You know, an NFL player that is last on the bench, but plays for a year can make $25,000, $30,000 a year on royalties from licenses on products that they may or may not have been featured in at all. But it's a split from those group licensing deals, and I think that is a big limiter for student athletes, especially with the NCAA video game being a big thing we all want back.
Yes.
You can't imagine that without some sort of licensing rights, and so that's going to be a challenge. But one I think is going to be short-lived. There's going to be schools that push for some changes around that specifically, because no one on this call, none of us, could use the University of Nebraska's marks to monetize anything without their permission.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no separate rule needed to make it for a student athlete. If a student athlete can secure with their own dollars and contracts the rights to use the University of Nebraska's marks and monetize it, why stop them? And that becomes an interesting thing too, is that restriction in itself, I think, is one of those that will be upturned sooner than most of the other ones. And that would pave the way towards an NCAA video game type opportunity if there's some shifts in the way they approach licensing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Blake. Like, do you see the changes coming? I guess you just kind of answered it there, but that seems like one of those roadblocks that when we found that out, last week or 2 weeks ago, that I kind of scratched my head about it, and I was a little confused that they weren't trying to tap into that source of revenue because it could help out not only the players but themselves as well.
You know what I think the issue is that there's 10 months to do all this, guys. Like this is boil in the ocean type stuff. It's and if you are breaking it down quadrant by quadrant, you got physical promotions, which have inherent challenges of where did the student athlete go? How long were they there? How many people showed up? Why were they paid that amount? Right? Because Josh, for you, who's your favorite athlete? Like just quick, top of mind.
Well, it was Kobe Bryant, but RIP. I mean, he was certainly the guy I liked the most. Man, right now I can't even think of somebody that I like.
So let's stay with Kobe. Let's talk about that. So let's say that there's a Kobe Bryant autograph.
Okay.
And there's no dollar amount on it. You and I both get to go up and bid on it. And you say, I pay $100 for this. And I say I'd pay 10. What's the market value?
100, right?
Well, maybe it's in between those two, because I'm willing to pay 10, you're willing to pay 100. Now, fair market value for a physical promotion interaction is in the eye of the beholder.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And that becomes a challenge on itself, is that you might get in line to get Adrian Martinez autograph because you went to the same high school as him. And you might be willing to pay him more because that's a stronger connection. And there's no way to quantify that outside of your mind and his.
Sure.
And so that's a cluster. Then you have physical products, jerseys and whatnot. Like just by cutting off licensing, you don't have to worry about that quadrant as much. And then you have digital products, which are video games and mobile apps and all that. You cut off licensing, you don't have to worry about that as much. So then you just have digital promotions, which are student athletes pushing out photos, videos, getting paid for them on Twitter or monetizing YouTube. So the NCAA is able to look at two things, not four, by cutting licensing off. And let's spend some time getting this right. And of those two, digital promotions, which I believe the majority of the dollars are going to flow through, are the most tangible of all forms of name, image, likeness compensation, guys. It's you see it. It's right in front of you. You can tell, did they use the marks or not? And if you start a YouTube channel and you get 10,000 views, I start one, I get 1,000, you should make 10 times as much as I do. Super easy to understand. Doesn't matter who you are, who I am. So that's the part that NCAA is just trying to cut the market in half, get some of it right before we unleash the rest.
Blake, along those lines, I wanted to ask you this because you were in a locker room, and one of the things that always comes up when we talk about name, image, likeness is this concern about, well, Adrian Martinez, he's going to be able to make X, and the backup left guard is not going to be able to make anything, let alone a few dollars. What is that going to do to the locker room? I always push back against that. I'm curious as to what your response is as somebody who was in a locker room.
You know, I would tell you what, guys, like Sam Keller talked to more girls at the party. You know, I don't know. That's crazy how that works.
And may or may not have thrown an iced tea at one of them.
No doubt. I was a witness to many things. But boys, I'm telling you, it already exists. I mean, there's a measuring contest in many different ways, and in every locker room, every level of sports. This is no different. Adrian has more followers. That great, right? Then if he sends out a message, he gets more likes. Well, that makes sense. Right? Like nobody here is going to fight over the fact that they're already comparing. They're already looking down at their phones and saying, I want more likes. I want more followers. I got to get my stats up so I can get more DMs or, you know, whatever the value is that they see in it. So that exists already in every locker room, putting a dollar amount beside it. And, you know, at the end of the day, I went out and I did the life skill stuff. I volunteered in the community and I put myself out there in a position where when I was done playing ball, I had 1,000 followers on Twitter. I got asked to co-host this television show called Big Red Wrap Up. Did it for 8 years. And it's because when others weren't putting in the effort, I did. I leaned into the life skill stuff. And so I don't think anyone in my class would ever look at me and say, oh, you know, that's not fair. This stuff is going to come to those that work hard for it. You're either really good at the sport you play, you're really good at engaging with the community, and you're rewarded for it. No athlete in the right mind would argue against a model that rewards great effort. Fans will argue to high hell about it. But in that locker room, the leaders are the ones that put in the effort and have the skill set, and that makes sense no matter what the comparison is.
Blake, this has been a tremendous conversation, and I can't say enough. I think the university is pretty fortunate that they've already teamed up with you and Audie in the past. You guys know your stuff, and so I'm sure they've got their questions. The athletes are all going to have the questions, and you guys are going to be there to provide the answers. Before we let you go, Stibbs, did you notice? He's already shaking his head.
I did.
Did you notice the little thing on his sweatshirt there?
It's not
Blake?
It's not team specific, is it, Blake?
No, it's not. It's not.
Yeah, but we know where Blake's from, and we know who Blake was probably rooting for.
I had a chance to see it live, boys. It was great. Chiefs. That's the last great sporting event that we've seen in a while. So.
It certainly is.
Stibbs, would you agree? Last great sporting event we've seen in a while.
We have some disagreements there, Blake, but I'm happy for you. Kind of.
Yeah. Stibbs with the Broncos get up. Well, Blake, this has been a fun conversation. We really appreciate it. Thanks for getting some extra time for us too. And take care and good luck.
Yeah, you guys are great. Happy to hop on anytime, but you guys have a good rest of the night.
You
Thank
too.
you, Blake.
Lawrence of Opendorse, former Husker linebacker. That was fun. Good stuff.
What? The stuff at the end about the locker room component, I think that he put it in a way that sadly somehow we never have, and that is the idea. It's like it's not like Adrian Martinez or any player who would command more dollars didn't earn that. They did. They earned that, just like they earned their scholarship.
Sure
so I think that is something really important to think about. And he's right. It might not be money right now, or it might not have been money in the past, but they are always measuring themselves against their teammates. And you're always going to have the players that are more popular, that have easier access to dating, that have easier access to, the best spot at the bar, whatever it is. They always have had those accesses because they are, the quarterback's going to get that. The running back's going to get that. That's how life works.
And how about, talking about, comparing like a Lexi Sun, for example, to an Adrian Martinez? I mean, obviously Lexi's been very active. He mentioned that we've always assumed this whole time that, well, of course, the quarterback and the starting point guard and, this stud wide receiver, they're going to make all the endorsement money and everybody else is going to get a penny. You're not going to get a thing. But But the female component to all this, as Blake explained, I think is really interesting, because you're right. They use these social media platforms. They engage a little bit more, and it's going to be about engagement with their followers, with their fans, and I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic too to watch, as because some players, gets to the season and it's like, I'm shutting off social media. I'm not doing anything. I'm keeping everything. Now you wonder how many more of them will be involved a little bit more, because it's the engagements that are going to create the impressions, which are then going to create the opportunity for monetization. And that can, of course, have some negative effects, because there are some players who are right and probably making the smart move by not engaging on social media during the season, because of the negativity that can happen and the distraction that it can cause. So there's going to be an important balance there for athletes to, if they want to monetize their social media presence, they're also going to have to learn how to use that social media very diligently, but yet
100%.
responsibly at the same time, because and not fall into the trap of falling for all the trolls and stuff like that, because
and the way it's going to prepare you for your life even after college, even if whether you're an athlete or not, and just how to act, I guess, if you will, on social media.
Yeah, this isn't going to be just snap your fingers. I'm gonna start printing money now. You've got to be active. You've got to be engaging, and you've got to be responsible. And there are some times when you're young. Heck, you don't even have to be young. There are those of us who use this stuff when we're old that probably tweet things that they regret. And now you're just going to have to be that much more careful, because you can lose impressions, and if you lose impressions, you can lose money. So if you're actually looking to monetize this, how you use that social media is going to be critical to the whole thing.
It is. Good stuff.
Great stuff with Blake Lawrence. Really appreciate him being able to join us from his vacation from right now. All right, we're coming back with more. We got What You Say, and Nate Klaus is at the bottom of the hour on 1620 The Zone.
Bye, Stibs TV. See you later. See you tomorrow.
My friends.